Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamey Daddy channel. So today I wanted to basically critique an approach that the developers for the Division 2 took to have people come into the dark zone. Now, when I say developers, I mean the creative director himself or whoever they are, because the creative director of a game is the person who actually drives the game and its direction. The developers basically follow or add input as they're going along to kind of improve upon ideas that are already existing. At the end of the day, the buck stops with the creative director. Now, before I jump into this critique, you guys already know I'm a Division fan, and I don't hide my bias for the Division. I've never, ever hid my bias for this game. I like the game. Having played the Division 1 and covered content on it from the first game, you can tell that this is a game that I really do enjoy playing and enjoy talking about. But at the same time, on doing more research on what it takes to bring a game to the table, I've realized that making a video game can make you or break you. And Cyberpunk 2077 right now is picture perfect for that scenario where a game breaks you. The development team just made so many errors, and on looking very closely, I have more respect for anybody that can bring a game. Yes, as much as I will beat down on EA verbally or beat down on Ubisoft in some cases verbally, I just want to say hats off to those developers that were able to get a game out regardless of all of the surrounding issues. Bringing a game out in this market, getting the community basically in some cases spit it out or in some cases accept it is just part of the whole gig. So, that being said, let me try to provide a little, background to what I'm talking about. When the Division 2 first came out, the development team or whoever was at the helm of these decisions thought it, appropriate to have people come into the dark zone to farm dark zone specific items. These were items, gear, in some cases weapons that would only drop inside of the dark zone. And I think this was used as some sort of an incentive to bring people into the DZ in order for there to be some interaction that would lead to the open sandbox, DZ interaction, the manhunts, the running around, all of that freeform stuff. But guess what happened? That did not necessarily pull a lot of PvE players into the dark zone, regardless of how good these items were. And what's even funnier is I finally got myself one of the most difficult items to get into Division 2 at one point, which was the Hollow Man Mask. For the longest time, I never got one, and it's almost 2 years into the game before I'm finally getting my first one. And I got it from the Dark Zone, and I was PvEing, I was just running around and just taking out bad guys, which is something that I do enjoy doing at the end game, actually, which is farming the DZ and playing legendary missions. In the Division 1, it was the exact same thing I did at the end of life of the game. Through when the game ended, I just played legendary mode, I went into Dark Zone, and I farmed for everything from there. And that's just my playstyle. That's how I get to enjoy the game. But at the end of the day, it wasn't because of these items. In fact, I said to myself, forget these items. If I don't get them, I don't get them. And I can't imagine how many other people probably said the exact same thing. They were like, forget it. We're not going to go into DZ. Nothing's going to make me go farm for this and then have to deal with and contend with all the issues there. Which brings me to a slightly fundamental problem with the dark zone as a loot source and why many people avoid it like the plague, especially because of their playstyle. Now, I believe that if the dark zone is to attract people, it needs to attract people for exactly what it is, and that would be the dark zone as a sandbox itself. The Division 1 dark zone basically had almost no exclusives in it, if I'm not mistaken, or no exclusives in it at all, and it still was able to attract people to it. And that was because of the environment and a bunch of other things that I would just leave out for this video. And so when you think about it, you have to ask yourself, what is the most compelling thing about such a sandbox? Well, that's basically the sandbox itself, and that's absent from the Division 2. The Division 2 puts you in a scenario where you not only have to go into this environment to farm for something, you're going to go there and fight enemy AI for this particular item, and also fight against the RNG being the random number generator, the possibility that you may or may not get this item, which in many cases these items were actually very scarce and had lower percentage drop rates. And then after fighting through that barrier, you then had to contend with the possibility of a player or a group of players coming to take that item from you. Just imagine at the peak of when the Hollow Mask was very, very rare to find, you found it, and then you went to an extraction point and somebody shot you and took it. It might have even been somebody who had one, but they didn't like theirs because they are no-lifers and all they do is grind, and they just didn't like yours and then they crushed it. That is not a scenario for many gamers. Many gamers in today's world don't want to really work for a lot of, their gameplay and their enjoyment. And it's not because they're lazy. I've seen this get translated to people being lazy and people just being entitled and just want things on a whim. No, this is because the average gamer has aged over the course of a few years. The days of our grind slowly lessens, or quickly or increasingly lessens, as we get older and assume more responsibility. So the amount of playtime that we can put on the ground is not the same as the playtime that we could perhaps maybe a few years prior. And so this kind of a conundrum is irritating to some players, where they're looking for this one item, they come back home from work after struggling and fighting the whole world, then they come back home and then you expect for them to fight all of these different aspects of the game. If the developers and massive Ubisoft are thinking that their audience for this game is going to basically, scale down in age, it is not going to happen. If anything, The Division 2 has been a game that has attracted much more of a mature audience than any game that I've been, in a community of gamers with. And that's really interesting. So if they consider that, then they will understand the approach that they need to make the Dark Zone a better and a fun place, rather than trying to use gear, or, like one of the developers said in the last state of the game, a carrot on the stick to try to lure people in there. Yes, he said a carrot on the stick. It was really interesting that came from the development, side of things, and this is something they discussed in a meeting. So that's my critique that I'm levying towards this DZ exclusive, approach. I think it largely failed because all of these items have now become, a staple that you can get in the DZ, because no one's PvPing in the DZ. You can go in there and farm and most likely get your stuff out. But at the end of the day, many of these items don't even work for a lot of the builds that we run in PvE, and in most cases don't even run for the builds that are run in PvP. So I guess it was a failed experiment, or a failed approach, or just an ineffective approach, if I'm gonna be nice. And so there's another approach that needs to happen, which is bringing or identifying the mechanisms and the things that made people enjoy the Division Dark Zone from the first game, and bringing and implementing that perhaps in their third game. Thank you so much for your time and audience. I appreciate you guys so much. Hopefully we'll see in another video. Peace out.